Hello and welcome to the Responsive Family Sleep Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Hawley, holistic sleep coach, lactation consultant, peaceful parenting educator, and mom. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by all the conflicting sleep info, frustrated with sleep information that just plain felt wrong, or searched desperately for a truly gentle and responsive sleep approach, then you are in the right place. In each episode, we'll be answering your most pressing baby and toddler sleep questions, busting those sleep myths, and helping you understand truly developmental, biologically normal baby and toddler sleep, plus encouraging you to trust your intuition along the way. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. This week, I want to talk about ways to reflect, things to think about, questions to ask yourself when you're making a sleep change and it feels hard, like harder than expected, like you're not sure if you should be continuing. And I think it's really easy to do one of two things, right? As soon as it feels hard to bail, right? And say, this isn't it, and kind of hop all over the place. This isn't the right choice. Let's do something else. And the opposite can be true. It can feel like the pressure to be consistent is so strong that we are pushing through a strategy that is not right because we're afraid to be inconsistent and stop. And neither of those are a great place to be, right? So I am not here to say that we can always have an easy change when it comes to a parent-led change around sleep. That is not a realistic expectation. And so I think we have to prepare ourselves, knowing our kiddo for what that change might look like, but it's also good to pause and reflect if it's not going as expected, because it is okay to stop and it is okay to change your mind or to try again later. So let's talk through some questions you might want to ask yourself if you're like, oh my God, this is not going as expected. This is really, really hard. So the first thing is, what do you mean by hard? Like hard, like you thought it would be smooth sailing and, it took you an extra hour to get through bedtime, or hard like your child is so distraught that it's really not even worth giving it another night of trying, right? I think these are really different situations and worth kind of piecing out, what do we mean by it's hard, And that can be helpful to reflect on. Maybe we just thought it was going to be smooth sailing and it's not. Or maybe it's really bad, right? And it's just, it is not a good idea to continue. The next thing is the timing right? And what I mean by this is sometimes we'll get this idea that we should try something and we'll jump right into it, but we won't think about the fact that we've been really off routine over the last month. I mean, this is coming out in July, right? We've had a lot of travel, or we've had a lot of visitors. We've just had a lot of extra summer outings at the pool, out with, friends, family. And then we're like, let's make this change, whatever that change is. But we are just kind of out of sorts all over the place. So sometimes things are harder because we've been off routine, or because our baby just started rolling, just started crawling, just started walking, right? So a big developmental shift. And so that can be a good time to actually not take a big step in sleep. Sleep changes tend to happen best when we're in a good routine and development is feeling kind of steady, right? Not in one of those big leap forward type moments. The other piece about timing that can be worth thinking about is like, how long have you been trying this for? I see parents kind of panic trying something on the first night, especially if it's a bigger step, even if they've thought that bigger step through, and then just be like, we shouldn't do this. I'm generally an advocate for smaller, more gradual steps, but there's absolutely a time and a place for larger, still supported steps. And so, if you really, really think it's too much for your child, you can always stop on the first night, right? But if you really want to give something a chance to see if it works, ideally we want to give it 3 or 4 nights and see if it gets easier. Not perfect, not easy, not smooth sailing, but easier. Because if something is stressful on the first night, but it's getting easier over the first few nights, then it can be worth saying, like, let's give this a little bit longer, right? But if it's really stressful for your kiddo, even with a ton of support, right? Like, I'm not talking about setting your child down and walking away and leaving them to cry. I'm talking about very supported change. So if it's still really, really stressful, then it can be worth going, you know what? Maybe this is not the right strategy or the right timing. And let's maybe pause and really reset and revisit this down the road. Kind of going along with that is like, does this feel out of my kiddo's scope? I think as parents, this is a really subjective in a good way, like a gut, you know your kiddo best kind of way. But like, how does this feel for their temperament, right? If they're really easygoing, but this is really stressful for them, this might be too big of an ask right now. But if they kind of are very dramatic with their feelings on the regular, then it's like, oh, maybe this is actually a norm for them, and we can really support them through this. So again, I don't like regularly just stressing babies out for no reason. That's not generally part of my approach. But if we're making a change and your baby is reacting, I think it's worth thinking about, like, is this within their zone of cope? Or are we asking too much? And maybe there's a smaller step you can take. And then along the same lines, are you in a place to support your child through that change and any big emotions that come up through that change? And if you are feeling super taxed, like with life, work, other responsibilities, you don't feel like you can be very present and responsive through some big emotions, then maybe it is not the time to make a big change that might bring up big emotions. Right? Like, it is okay to say, hey, I am really overloaded with work right now or other family obligations. I need these other things to settle down before we say tackle night weaning, right? Or something else. So that is totally okay. Another thing that I think is really helpful is like, what is your motivation for making the change? Because if it feels like maybe you're pushing your kiddo a bit too hard and your motivation is just because everyone says we should be doing that, well, maybe that's a really good time to reevaluate, right? This doesn't feel like a good fit. I thought it would be okay. I thought the strategy would work. And that's normal. Sometimes we miscalculate those things. But if it is actually, there's an urgent, real reason this change has to be made, then maybe we can't bail on it right now, right? Maybe we actually do really need this to happen. But are there other ways to approach it, right? Or are there other ideas you can bring in? So this is just different ways to think through a situation when it feels hard, right? Because sometimes we do need to be more consistent to gain traction. And we do need to expect that we're going to have to do some extra soothing. We're going to take some extra time. Making a change rarely makes it easier in the moment. It is usually harder as we're moving through the change before that change becomes the norm. And that's not a reason to push through when your child is clearly distressed, past their cope, it's not getting better, and you feel really badly about it, right? So maybe that's another thing to put in here is, how does this change feel with how you want to be parenting? Because there are often many ways to do things. So even if you're like, I need to make a change, but this strategy doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't feel like it's within my kiddo's cope. It doesn't feel like I can soothe them well. It doesn't feel aligned with my values. That's why lots of people come to me, right? They know they need to make a change. The information they've been getting doesn't feel aligned with their values. It feels too abrupt. It feels too non-responsive. And so we need to find a way to make a change that does feel connected, that does feel within their cope. Your motivation for the change is really important because it can also sometimes give you other avenues, right? Maybe night weaning isn't in your child's cope, but maybe it was actually the twiddling with your other hand and fidgeting with your body that was setting you off. So maybe we need to work on other ways to cope with that, but we still can allow some nursing. And kind of along those same lines is is it aligning with your values? If the answer is no, then let's pause and let's find something that still makes a meaningful, positive shift, but does align with your values better, does feel like a better fit. So change can be hard. Change can take effort, right? It's usually easiest to do what is easiest and has been working, even if that isn't totally working for you anymore, hence like the motivation to make a change. But hard doesn't always mean we should bail, and hard doesn't always mean that we should push through in the name of consistency. What I do encourage you to do, if you find that you've been trying a lot of things and kind of deciding they didn't work fairly quickly and switching to something else, is to remember that the more shifting and changing of expectations we have on our kiddos, often the more stressful it is for them. And so it is always okay to stop something that doesn't feel right. Always. And sometimes we really do need to give time to reset afterwards and not bounce from thing to thing to thing, especially if you don't have a lot of intention right behind it. If you're just kind of trying different things people have told you, that can be a good sign to be like, all right, pause, regroup, let's try to think through this a bit more intentionally, a bit more systematically, so that we are not hopping from thing to thing to thing too much and making it tricky for everyone in the family to know what is expected. So this gives you some food for thought. I am certainly here for you if you want some help in sorting through the hard and making changes. And it's a really personal decision whether to push through or whether to pivot in these moments. There is definitely not a right or wrong choice. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this episode left you feeling more informed, confident, and encouraged on your sleep journey. And just a reminder before you go that nothing in this episode is individualized to your specific sleep situation, nor is it to be taken as medical advice. Take what resonates, ignore what doesn't, and check with your healthcare provider about any medical concerns. Take a moment to subscribe to this podcast so that you'll never miss an episode. And take a moment to rate, review, or share an episode you love on social media. All of that helps parents just like you find me, this podcast, and this gentle and responsive sleep information. I'll see you next time.